Watch this story in full. Subscribe, comment and like my channel, Green Mythology, for mythology and history. Gateway 2, the captivating worlds of ancient myth. Now watch the story in full please. The biting wind, a relentless predator, clawed at the fringes of the Anishinaabe settlement. Snow, thick and unforgiving, had blanketed the land for moons, transforming the once familiar forests and frozen lakes into a desolate, white expanse. The warmth of summer and the bounty of autumn were distant memories, replaced by the gnawing emptiness of winter's cruelest embrace. Famine, a gaunt specter, stalked the village, its icy fingers tightening around the bellies of young and old alike. Around the dwindling fires, the elders spoke in hushed, worried tones. Their faces, etched with the lines of countless harsh winters, now bore the deeper furrows of fear. They recounted the ancient tales, the chilling legends passed down through generations, stories of the Wendigo. A malevolent spirit, they whispered, born of the harshest winters and the most terrible of human transgressions. A creature of insatiable hunger, forever seeking to devour the very essence of life. It was said to be gaunt and skeletal, its skin stretched taut over bone, its eyes burning with a cold, unholy light. Its breath carried the stench of the grave, and its cry was the sound of the wind itself, howling in eternal hunger. The Wendigo, the elders warned, was not merely a monster of flesh and blood. It was a spirit of corruption, one that could take root in the hearts of men, especially in times of desperation. Those who succumb to the ultimate taboo, cannibalism, risk not only their own souls but also the unleashing of this terrible entity upon their community. In one of the wigwams, huddled around a meager fire that offered little comfort against the penetrating cold, lived a family, a father, Chaitin, his wife, Manoa, and the two young children, a boy named Mijasi and a girl called Wapi. Chaitin, a strong and respected hunter in better times, now bore the gaunt look of starvation. His eyes, once bright with vitality, were now clouded with worry and a growing desperation. The game had disappeared weeks ago. The snares remained empty, the fishing holes yielded nothing but ice. Their stores of dried meat and berries were long gone. The children, their laughter once filling the wigwam, now whimpered softly in their sleep, their small bodies weakened by hunger. Manoa, her face pale and drawn, did her best to comfort them, her own stomach twisting with emptiness. Chaitin had ventured out into the blizzard countless times, his hope dwindling with each fruitless journey. He had tracked deer for days, only to find their frozen carcasses, already ravaged by wolves. The forest, once a source of life, now seemed like a vast, silent tomb. One evening, as the shadows lengthened and the wind howled with renewed ferocity, Chaitin returned to the wigwam, his shoulders slumped with defeat. He carried nothing. Manoa looked at him, her eyes filled with a silent question. He shook his head, unable to meet her gaze. That night, the hunger in the wigwam was a tangible thing, a heavy presence that suffocated their thoughts. Mijasi cried softly, his small body trembling. Wapi, usually the more resilient of the two, lay listlessly, her eyes dull. As the days bled into nights, the whispers began to circulate through the village, carried on the icy wind. Stories of strange tracks found in the deeper parts of the forest, tracks larger than any known animal, with disturbingly human-like features. Tales of chilling cries echoing through the night, not the howl of a wolf, but something higher-pitched, more mournful, and infinitely more terrifying. The legend of the Wendigo, once a distant fear, now felt chillingly close. One morning, a group of hunters, their faces etched with horror, stumbled back into the village. They spoke of finding a small, isolated camp, the remnants of another family who had sought refuge deeper in the woods. The scene they described was gruesome, unspeakable. The wigwam was torn apart, and scattered amongst the snow were bones, human bones, stripped clean. There were no signs of animals, only the chilling implication of what had transpired. Fear, cold and sharp, pierced the heart of the village. The elders gathered, their faces grim. They spoke of the ancient warnings, of the terrible consequences of succumbing to the darkest of hungers. The discovery confirmed their worst fears. The Wendigo was near, or perhaps, something even more terrifying had already taken hold. Chaitin listened to the hushed pronouncements, his blood running cold. He looked at his own children, their faces pale and fragile. The thought of such a fate befalling his family filled him with a primal terror. He vowed to protect them, no matter the cost. As the famine worsened, desperation began to gnaw at the edges of the community. Suspicion and fear grew, poisoning the bonds that had once held them together. People looked at each other with wary eyes, wondering who among them might be harboring the unspeakable hunger. One night, Chaitin had a dream. He stood in a snow-covered forest, the trees skeletal and bare. The air was bitingly cold, and an oppressive silence hung in the air. Then, he heard it, a chilling cry that seemed to pierce through the very marrow of his bones. He turned and saw it, a gaunt figure standing in the shadows, its eyes glowing with a malevolent light. It was tall and emaciated, its limbs unnaturally long, its skin stretched tightly over a frame of sharp bones. Its face was a grotesque mask, with hollow cheeks and a lipless grin that revealed rows of jagged teeth. The stench of decay filled the air. The Wendigo, it beckoned to him with a long, skeletal finger, its eyes fixed on him with an insatiable hunger. Chaitin tried to run, but his legs felt heavy, rooted to the ground. The creature glided towards him, its movements unnaturally swift and silent. He could feel its cold presence reaching into his very soul, whispering dark temptations. He awoke with a gasp, his body drenched in a cold sweat. The image of the Wendigo, its terrifying visage burned into his mind, lingered in the darkness of the wigwam. He looked at his sleeping children, their innocent faces a stark contrast to the horror he had just witnessed. He held them close, his heart pounding with a mixture of fear and fierce protectiveness. The dream served as a stark reminder of the danger that lurked not only outside but also within. The hunger was a constant torment, a gnawing void that threatened to consume them all. He knew that he had to find food, and soon, or they would all perish. Driven by desperation, Chaitin decided to venture further than he ever had before. He would travel to the old hunting grounds, a place the elders had warned him to avoid during the deep winter, a place said to be haunted by ancient spirits. But he had no other choice. He kissed Manoah and his sleeping children goodbye, promising to return with food. He took his bow, a few remaining arrows, and a small knife, and set out into the frozen wilderness. The wind howled around him, carrying the whispers of the Wendigo, but he pressed on, his determination fueled by his love for his family. The journey was arduous, the snow was deep, and the cold bit through his layers of fur. He walked for days, his hunger growing with each step. He saw no signs of game, only the endless expanse of white and the skeletal silhouettes of trees against the gray sky. Just as his hope began to wane, he stumbled upon something that made his blood run cold. He found tracks in the snow, large, disturbingly human-like tracks, but far too big, far too unnatural. They led deeper into the forest, towards a dark and foreboding ravine. A sense of dread washed over him. He knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that these were the tracks of the Wendigo. He hesitated, fear warring with his desperate need to find food for his family. Then, he remembered his dream, the creature's hungry eyes, the stench of decay. He thought of his children, their weak cries, Manoah's pale face. He could not turn back. He had to know what lay ahead. He followed the tracks cautiously, his senses on high alert. The air grew colder as he approached the ravine, and a strange silence fell over the forest, as if even nature held its breath in fear. He reached the edge of the ravine and peered down. The sight that greeted him made his heart pound in his chest. In a small clearing below, he saw a figure hunched over something on the ground. It was tall and gaunt, its body unnaturally thin, its limbs long and spindly. Its back was to him, but even from this distance, he could sense the malevolent aura that radiated from it. The Wendigo. It was tearing at something on the ground, its movements jerky and ravenous. Chaitin could not see what it was eating, but the scene filled him with a primal revulsion. He nocked an arrow, his hand trembling slightly. He knew that he had to act, to protect his family and his village from this monstrous entity. But fear gripped him, paralyzing his will. Suddenly, the Wendigo stopped eating and turned its head. Its eyes, glowing with a cold, unholy light, fixed on Chaitan. He felt a wave of pure terror wash over him, so intense that he almost dropped his bow. The creature rose to its full height, its gaunt frame towering over the clearing. Its face was even more horrifying up close. The hollow cheeks, the lipless grin revealing rows of jagged teeth, the stench of death that emanated from it. It let out a chilling cry, a sound that seemed to echo through the very fabric of the forest, a mournful, hungry wail that sent shivers down Chaitan's spine. Then, it began to move towards him, its long, spindly limbs carrying it with unnatural speed. Chaitan knew that he had to fight, even though every instinct told him to flee. He drew back his bow and released the arrow. It flew true, striking the Wendigo in the chest. The creature staggered back, but the arrow seemed to have little effect. It simply pulled the arrow out and tossed it aside, its eyes still fixed on Chaitan with that insatiable hunger. It lunged at him, its long claws extended. Chaitan dodged, scrambling back from the edge of the ravine. He nocked another arrow, firing again and again, but the Wendigo seemed impervious to his attacks. The creature was upon him now, its icy breath chilling him to the bone. Its claws raked across his arm, tearing through his furs and skin. Pain shot through him, but he fought back, wielding his knife with desperate strength. He managed to stab the Wendigo in the side, but the creature barely flinched. It grabbed him with its long, bony fingers, its grip like iron. Chaitan felt his strength fading, his body weakened by hunger and the cold. He knew that he could not hold out much longer. Just as he thought all was lost, he remembered the stories the elders had told. The Wendigo was a spirit of corruption, born of the breaking of the ultimate taboo. It could be weakened by purity and strength of spirit. He looked into the creature's cold, empty eyes and felt a surge of defiance. He would not succumb to fear. He would fight for his family, for his people. With a renewed surge of strength, he twisted free from the Wendigo's grasp and stumbled back. He raised his knife, his hand trembling but his resolve firm. He knew that he could not defeat the Wendigo with physical strength alone. He had to find a way to strike at its spirit. He began to chant, the ancient words of protection passed down through his ancestors. His voice was weak at first, but as he continued, it grew stronger, filled with the power of his belief. The Wendigo recoiled, its eyes flickering with a hint of fear. The chanting seemed to be affecting it, disrupting its malevolent energy. Chaitan continued to chant, his voice ringing through the silent forest. He could feel a warmth spreading through him, a sense of strength and purity that pushed back against the creature's icy presence. The Wendigo shrieked, a sound of pure agony, and stumbled back again. Its form seemed to flicker, as if it were being consumed by an unseen fire. Chaitan pressed his advantage, chanting louder, his voice filled with the power of his ancestors, the strength of his love for his family, and the purity of his spirit. With a final, agonizing cry, the Wendigo dissolved into the air, leaving behind only a lingering sense of cold and the faint stench of decay. Chaitan stood there, panting, his body trembling, but his spirit unbroken. He had faced the Wendigo and survived. He knew that he had to return to his village, to tell them what had happened and to warn them of the danger that still lurked in the frozen wilderness. He turned and began the long journey back, his heart filled with a mixture of relief and a profound weariness. He carried the wounds of his encounter, but he also carried the knowledge that even in the darkest of times, the strength of the human spirit could prevail. He finally reached the village, his body exhausted but his spirit soaring. He recounted his terrifying encounter, showing them his wounds and describing the creature he had faced. The elders listened in silence, their faces grave. They knew that Chaitan had faced a great evil and had emerged victorious. His bravery served as a beacon of hope in the darkest hour. The story of Chaitan's encounter with the Wendigo was passed down through the generations, a reminder of the dangers of the winter and the importance of resisting the temptations of desperation. It was a testament to the strength of the human spirit and the power of ancient traditions to ward off the darkness. And though the famine eventually subsided with the return of spring, the memory of the Wendigo lingered, a chilling reminder of the malevolent spirit that dwelled in the frozen heart of the wilderness, waiting for the next season of hardship to awaken its insatiable hunger. The Anishinaabe people never forgot the legend, for they knew that the Wendigo was not just a creature of folklore, but a reflection of the darkness that could take root in the hearts of men when faced with the ultimate test of survival.